much, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Yellen, I want to talk just a little bit about housing reform, housing finance reform, I should say, which I think is in some ways the great unfinished business of the financial crisis. As you know, the GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, are still in conservatorship, still perceived as too big to fail. Now they hold almost no capital. But Secretary Mnuchin and Director Calabria of the FHFA did take some significant steps that seemed to me steps in the right direction. While I would have preferred going further, at least there is an end to the automatic profit sweep. There is the opportunity to build up capital through retained earnings. There is a capital target now for the GSEs, and there are rules that are meant to limit the acquisition of the riskiest loans by the GSEs. Have you had a chance to look at these reforms, and have you determined that you would support leaving them in place?
Senator Toomey, it's a very important matter. Nothing is more important to the future of housing in the United States than what we do with Fannie and Freddie. And I need to look carefully at what's been put in place. And ultimately, we need to find a solution that has bipartisan support and to work with Congress to craft an approach.
Okay, will you commit to developing and releasing reform principles for both on the regulatory side as well as on the legislative side?
We will certainly give priority to studying this issue and coming up with ideas about what should be done.
Okay, and just quickly to follow up on the conversation we had the other day about the FSOC designations, one of my concerns has always been that SIFI designations create the expectations of a taxpayer bailout should a problem occur. In a way, it designates the firms that are so designated as too big to fail. Interestingly, certain categories of financial institutions have not been designated, and it occurs to me that certain business models are inherently less of a risk to our financial system. For instance, asset managers that simply hold assets on behalf of investors, as opposed to banks that intermediate credit and transform maturity. So asset managers have not been designated as SIFIs thus far. Do you agree with the decision that's been made not to designate asset managers as SIFIs thus far?
Well, when I served on FSOC as Fed chair, it was proposed to look at activities that asset managers engage in that might pose systemic risks. And a paper was issued that mentioned problems of possibly looking at high leverage in hedge funds. A working group was formed that was to look at, I think it's since been disbanded, the matter of whether or not some hedge funds have dangerous levels of leverage, open-end mutual funds that promise daily redemption and liquidity, that invest in assets that are relatively illiquid, can pose problems. And I think we saw some of those problems in March. I think this is an activities-based approach that FSOC was pursuing, and I thought that was the right approach. So I would hope to look again at some of those approaches.
Yeah, and I would just point out the decision was made not to designate them, and I think that was the right decision. And I would point out that the money market funds have been remarkably stable and successful. But I appreciate that and look forward to working with you on these and other issues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.